Hi, my name's Mia. I'm 36. And last Thanksgiving, I walked into something I'll never forget. At a family party, I found my little girl sitting in a chair, her head completely shaved, and my own sister was laughing, calling it just a joke. That moment changed everything between us. Before I tell you the full story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories about family, betrayal, and courage. Thanksgiving has always been my favorite holiday. Not because of the food, though my mom's pumpkin pie could win awards, but because it's the one time of year our entire family gathers under one roof. Growing up, those dinners felt magical. Now, as an adult, I try to pass that same feeling on to my daughter, Lily. She's 10, bright-eyed, with the kind of smile that lights up a whole room. I wanted her to have those warm memories too. This past Thanksgiving, I drove us over to my parents' house just outside of Columbus, Ohio. The streets were already lined with early Christmas lights, the kind of neighborhood where everyone waves when you drive by. Lily was humming in the passenger seat, excited to see her cousins. She had spent extra time that morning brushing out her long brown hair, the hair she was so proud of. She told me she wanted to wear it down because Grandma likes it like that. We walked into the house carrying our pumpkin bread, greeted by the usual chaos, kids running in the hallway, football blasting from the living room, and the smell of turkey in the oven. My mom hugged us. My dad gave Lily a playful pat on the head, and everything felt normal for a moment. But then I realized Lily wasn't by my side. At first, I thought she had run off to play with her cousins. That would have been typical. But after a few minutes of chatting in the kitchen, I noticed she hadn't come back. I started down the hall, weaving past relatives balancing plates and drinks. That's when I heard it, faint buzzing like an electric razor. I froze. The sound was coming from the den, a small side room we usually used for board games or TV overflow. My heart picked up. Something felt wrong. I pushed the door open, and the sight in front of me made my stomach drop. There, in the middle of the den, sat Lily. Her small hands clutched the arms of a wooden chair. Her beautiful hair, the hair she had brushed so carefully that morning, lay in thick clumps on the carpet. Her scalp was bare, freshly shaved, with tiny patches sticking out unevenly. Tears streamed down her face. And standing behind her was my sister, Rachel. Rachel was holding a pair of clippers in her hand, like it was the funniest thing in the world. Her face was lit with amusement, not remorse. She looked at me and laughed. "Relax, Mia," she said, chuckling like she just told a harmless joke. "It's just hair. It's a joke." For a second, I couldn't breathe. My ears rang, my chest tightened, and I just stood there, staring at my baby. I wanted to scream, to grab those clippers, to shake Rachel, and ask if she'd lost her mind. But my voice caught in my throat. "Why?" I finally managed to whisper. Rachel shrugged. She said she was bored, so I thought it'd be funny. "Lighten up, it's Thanksgiving." Her words cut through me. I glanced at Lily, her lower lip trembling, her shoulders shaking. She hadn't said a word. She just looked at me, eyes pleading for help. That look burned into me more than anything Rachel said. I rushed over, pulling Lily into my arms. She buried her face in my sweater, her whole body shaking with sobs. I stroked the back of her head, feeling the rough patches of stubble against my palm. That texture, I'll never forget it. Rachel chuckled again. "Come on, Mia. Don't act like it's the end of the world. It'll grow back. She'll laugh about it later." Her voice was casual, dismissive, like she hadn't just humiliated my child. I wanted to shout. I wanted to call her every cruel word I could think of. But my parents' house was full of people. I could hear the chatter from the dining room, the clink of silverware, bursts of laughter. Part of me wanted to storm into that room and demand everyone look at what Rachel had done. But Another part of me, some strange protective instinct, kept me still. Lily was in my arms, crying, and I couldn't make her the center of even more attention. So instead, I whispered to her, "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. We're going to be okay." She nodded slightly against my chest, but her tears didn't stop. Rachel tossed the clippers on the side table. "You're so dramatic, Mia. Always have been." She brushed past me, like she hadn't just destroyed something precious. I sat there, on the edge of that chair, holding my daughter. I could feel every eye in the den on us. My cousin Mark stood in the doorway, looking uncomfortable, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. His wife tugged his sleeve and pulled him back into the hallway. Nobody said a word, and in that silence, I felt something I hadn't expected: betrayal. Not just from Rachel, but from everyone who had seen it happen and chose to look away. I gathered Lily in my arms and whispered, "Let's go wash your face, sweetheart." We slipped into the small bathroom down the hall. I wet a washcloth with warm water and gently wiped her cheeks. She stared at herself in the mirror, touching her bare scalp with trembling fingers. "Am I ugly now?" she whispered. My heart shattered. "No, baby, you're beautiful. Always." I knelt down, looking her straight in the eyes. "Hair doesn't change that. Don't you ever let anyone make you feel less." She nodded, but the doubt in her eyes lingered. I helped her wash up, then we walked back toward the dining room. The sound of laughter and chatter felt unreal, like we were stepping into another world that didn't care what had just happened. When we entered, all eyes glanced at us, then quickly looked away. Rachel was already seated, piling mashed potatoes onto her plate like nothing had happened. My mom glanced at me, her expression tight, but she didn't say anything. The silence was louder than words. I sat down with Lily beside me, my hand never leaving hers. She kept her eyes on her plate, pushing her food around with her fork. I could feel the weight of every unspoken word hanging over that table. Rachel finally smirked across the table. "What? Are we really going to act like I just committed a crime? It's hair. It's funny." She laughed again, but this time her laugh sounded hollow, like even she knew she had crossed a line. I didn't respond. Not yet. My chest was heavy with anger, but I knew this wasn't the moment to explode. I needed to think, to choose my words carefully, not for Rachel's sake, but for Lily's. I glanced at my daughter again, her fork still moving food around, her shoulders hunched. My heart ached for her, and in that moment I made a silent promise. I would not let her think this was okay. I would not let her believe silence was strength. The rest of the meal blurred by, every bite of food tasting like cardboard. My thoughts were a storm, circling one truth: this Thanksgiving would be the one we'd never forget. But not because of the turkey or the pie, because of what Rachel had done, and because of what I was going to do next. The clatter of silverware echoed, louder than it should have, each sound sharp against the suffocating silence that had settled over the dining room. I sat with Lily pressed close beside me, her small hand tucked under mine. She kept her eyes down, pushing turkey and green beans around her plate without ever lifting her fork. My own appetite had evaporated, but I forced myself to sit there, to hold steady, even as rage coiled tight in my chest. Around us, conversation flickered awkwardly, like a radio station that couldn't find the signal. My Uncle Tom mumbled something about football scores, his voice cracking halfway through. Aunt Susan responded with a distracted nod, though she never took her eyes off her plate. Nobody dared to look directly at Lily. Nobody dared to look at me. And then there was Rachel. She sat across from me, shoulders relaxed, smirk still plastered across her face, as if nothing had happened. She spooned cranberry sauce onto her plate, humming under her breath, almost daring me to say something. The clippers she had tossed aside earlier were probably still sitting in the den, silent proof of her cruelty. But here she acted like she hadn't just humiliated my daughter. The quiet felt heavier with every passing second. I caught my father's eye at the far end of the table. For a brief moment, I thought he might say something. He shifted in his chair, cleared his throat, and then reached for the gravy boat instead. My mother busied herself slicing the bread, her hands trembling slightly as she passed the basket down the line. The betrayal wasn't in the haircut alone. It was in this silence, in their refusal to break it. I leaned closer to Lily. "Do you want to step outside for some air?" I whispered. She shook her head quickly. "No, Mom. It'll make a scene." My throat tightened at her words. 10 years old, and she already understood what the rest of this family valued most, keeping the peace, even at the cost of dignity. Rachel chuckled suddenly, stabbing a piece of turkey with her fork. "You know, Mia, you're acting like I shaved her head against her will." She sat there the whole time. Her tone was mocking, her voice pitched just high enough that everyone could hear. Lily flinched beside me, shoulders curling inward. "Rachel," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt. "Enough." But Rachel only laughed louder. "What? It's true. If she didn't want it, she could have gotten up." A wave of heat rushed through me. I wanted to snap back, to tear into her with every ounce of anger burning in my chest. But before I could, my cousin Mark spoke up, his voice low, almost hesitant. "Maybe you went a little too far," he muttered. Every head turned toward him. His wife, Jessica, immediately nudged his arm, her eyes wide in warning. He clamped his mouth shut, staring down at his plate. Rachel rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on. It's not like I hurt her. Everyone's acting like I committed some crime. It's just hair. It'll grow back." No one responded. The silence pressed down heavier than before. I stared at the faces around me. Relatives who had watched Lily cry, who had seen her humiliated, and yet now chewed their food as if nothing had happened. My chest ached with disappointment. These were people I'd spent my life with, holidays, birthdays, barbecues, and not one of them was willing to speak up for my daughter. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm for Lily's sake. "You think this is funny, Rachel? You think humiliating a child is something to laugh about?" Rachel smirked, sipping her wine before replying. "It's not that deep, Mia. You're just sensitive. You always have been." Her words hung in the air like smoke. My jaw clenched, but before I could respond, Lily spoke. Her voice was so quiet I almost missed it. I didn't laugh. The entire table stilled. Forks froze midair. For the first time since we sat down, all eyes turned to her. Lily lifted her head slowly, her eyes glassy but steady. It wasn't funny. I didn't think it was a joke. The silence that followed was different this time. Heavier, denser. Rachel's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second before she forced it back. "She'll get over it," she said, dismissive, though her voice lacked its earlier confidence. I squeezed Lily's hand under the table, pride swelling in my chest despite the ache. She had spoken, even when the adults hadn't. Still, the room didn't shift. Nobody came to Lily's defense. Nobody scolded Rachel. The silence returned, swallowing up the moment like quicksand. The meal dragged on. I barely tasted a thing. Every time I lifted my glass, the water felt heavy in my hand. I caught whispers between relatives, someone asking quietly about the stuffing recipe, another commenting on the weather, but no one dared to break the real silence. Halfway through, I excused myself to refill Lily's drink in the kitchen. She followed, carrying her untouched plate. "Mom," she whispered once we were alone, "why isn't anyone saying anything? Don't they care?" Her question gutted me. "They care," I said softly, though even I didn't believe it in that moment. "They're just afraid of stirring things up." Lily frowned. "But it's already stirred up." Her simple truth hit me harder than anything else that day. Out of the mouths of children, clarity often comes. When we returned to the table, Rachel was in the middle of telling a story about her new job, laughing loud enough to fill the room. My family nodded along, eager to latch onto something ordinary, something safe. I watched them. The way they smiled, forced and fragile. The way they kept their eyes on Rachel, not Lily. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't about keeping peace. This was about convenience. It was easier for them to pretend nothing happened than to confront the ugliness sitting in front of them. I sat back, my arm wrapped around Lily's shoulders, and felt the weight of their silence settle like a stone in my chest. Dinner ended slowly, people excusing themselves one by one. Plates scraped, chairs pushed back, conversations about desserts floated around. But the silence, the real silence, never lifted. As I carried dishes to the sink, I overheard Aunt Susan whisper to my mom, "She should just let it go. It's only hair." My mom didn't respond. She simply dried the dishes with shaking hands. I wanted to scream, to shake them all, to ask how they could sit there, watch a child be humiliated, and then wash it away with pie and coffee. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I returned to Lily, who sat quietly in the corner of the living room watching her cousins play. Her bald head caught the soft glow of the lamp, her small shoulders hunched. None of the other kids teased her, but none invited her to join either. That was the weight of silence too, not just from the adults, but from the children who followed their example. I sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her once more. She leaned into me, her voice barely audible. "Can we go home soon?" "Soon, I promised." And as I held her, the truth solidified inside me. This silence wasn't going to end on its own. If no one else would speak, I knew I'd have to. I sat at that long dining table, my daughter's bare scalp catching the glow of the chandelier, her little hand still clenched in mine. The sound of forks scratching plates, glasses being set down too hard, and the fake hum of small talk pressed against my chest like a weight I couldn't breathe under. My sister, Laura, sat across from me, her smirk lingering like she had pulled off the funniest prank of the year. I had held it together as long as I could, but every second of silence, every complicit nod, every glance avoided, stacked like bricks until they threatened to crush me. My throat burned with words I'd been holding back, words I wasn't sure I could swallow any longer. The first crack. "Are we just going to sit here?" I finally said, my voice sharp enough to slice through the room and pretend like nothing happened. The clinking of silverware stopped. Conversations froze. My mother looked down at her plate, her lips pressing into a thin, nervous line. My father cleared his throat, but didn't look at me. Laura raised her eyebrows, leaning back in her chair, with that smug grin she wore like armor. "Oh, come on, Mia. You're really still hung up on this? It was just a joke. Don't be so dramatic." The word dramatic hit me like a slap. My daughter's eyes filled with tears at the sound of her aunt's voice, and I felt her small body lean closer to me, as if I could shield her from the shame still echoing in her heart. "A joke," I repeated, my tone low and trembling. "You shaved a 7-year-old's head. My daughter. You humiliated her in front of her own family. Tell me how that's a joke." The silence that followed wasn't quiet, it was suffocating. Gaslighting. Laura tilted her head and let out a fake laugh. "You're blowing this way out of proportion. It's hair, Mia. It grows back. You act like I ruined her life." My stomach twisted. The dismissiveness. The way she tried to shrink the horror into something ordinary. "Do you even hear yourself?" I snapped. My hands shook against the table, but I kept my grip firm on my daughter's fingers. "She trusted you. She thought you loved her. And you took a razor to her head while she cried." Laura rolled her eyes, but there was a flicker, just the smallest twitch, like she hadn't expected me to call it what it was. My father finally spoke, his voice low, worn. Mia, maybe we should just— No, Dad. I cut him off. My voice cracked, but I refused to let it break. We don't just anything. Not this time. I won't sit here and eat turkey while my sister laughs at my child's pain. The family divide. The table fractured in seconds. Aunt Carol muttered something about family drama at every holiday. My cousin Tyler snorted under his breath. My mother whispered, Mia, please not now. But my daughter's tiny fingers squeezed mine, silently begging me not to back down. That was all I needed. Laura leaned forward, her smirk gone, her eyes sharp now. You think you're better than me, don't you? Always the perfect daughter, the perfect mother, the one who gets sympathy from everyone. Maybe that's why I did it, to knock you down a peg. The confession, spiteful and raw, sent a chill straight through me. The room gasped, but no one spoke. You admit it, I said slowly, disbelief coating every word. Laura's chin lifted defiantly. So what if I do? Everyone here knows you're the golden girl. I was sick of it. My daughter's voice. Until then, my daughter had stayed silent, her little body trembling at my side. But now she let go of my hand and stood on her chair, her tear-streaked face red with anger. Aunt Laura, she said, her small voice shaking but clear, you're mean. You hurt me, and you laughed at me. The room went still. My heart ached, pride and sorrow flooding me all at once. Laura's eyes darted away. For the first time, she looked unsure. But before I could take a breath, my mother finally lifted her head and spoke. That's enough, Emily. Sit down. I froze. My own mother, my daughter's grandmother, shushing her like she was the problem. The betrayal stung more than I could stand. The breaking point. The dam inside me burst. No, I said, my voice rising above the table, steady and unflinching now. She doesn't sit down. She doesn't stay quiet. Not this time. Every pair of eyes turned to me, but I didn't care. My daughter deserved better than silence. You all sat here, I continued, my words trembling with rage, and watched Laura humiliate my child. And not one of you stood up for her. You let her be mocked. You let her be hurt. And now you want her to stay quiet so we can pretend this family is whole. The air was thick with tension, no one daring to breathe too loudly. My daughter looked up at me, her eyes wide, her little chest rising and falling fast. Laura sneered. You're just jealous, Mia. Jealous that people don't revolve around you. Newsflash, you're not the victim here. That was it. The line snapped inside me, the one I had been gripping for years. I pushed back my chair, the screech of wood against tile echoing like thunder. I stood, my voice steady, every syllable deliberate. No, Laura, you're right about one thing. I'm not the victim. I paused, my hand resting protectively on my daughter's shoulder. She is, and I won't let her be your punchline. The confrontation. I turned to the rest of the table, my voice shaking but resolute. If you can sit here and let a child be humiliated in your presence, then you're not family, you're bystanders. And I'm done protecting your comfort while my daughter suffers. The words poured out like fire. My father's face tightened, my mother looked pale, and Laura finally lost the smugness she clung to like a shield. You'll regret this, Laura spat. I stepped closer, my voice low but firm. No, Laura, the only regret here is yours. And one day, when you realize what you've lost, it'll be too late. The shattering silence. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence was heavy, broken only by my daughter's soft sniffles. I wrapped my arm around her and whispered, We're leaving. The scrape of my chair echoed like a declaration. My daughter clung to me, her face pressed against my side. As I led her away from the table, behind me I could feel their stares, shocked, angry, guilty, but I didn't turn back. Not once. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of their judgment. I wasn't afraid of being the one who ruined dinner, because dinner had already been ruined the moment they chose silence over justice. The hallway felt longer than it had ever been, every step echoing with the weight of what had just happened. My daughter's small hand clung to mine, her fingers sticky with cranberry sauce and fear. Behind us, the dining room remained frozen in stunned silence. No one followed. No one stopped us. The only sound was the faint hum of a football game playing in the background, a world carrying on as if nothing had shattered. When I pushed open the front door, the November air hit me sharp and cold. It burned my lungs and cleared my head at the same time. My daughter shivered, and I tucked her against my side, wrapping my coat tighter around her. We walked to the car without a word. The keys rattled in my hand as I fumbled to unlock the door. My daughter slid into the back seat, pulling her knees to her chest, her big eyes watching me through the dim glow of the porch light. I sat in the driver's seat, but I didn't start the engine. My hand stayed on the steering wheel, gripping it so tight my knuckles whitened. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked like someone I barely recognized. Flushed cheeks, wild eyes, hair falling loose around my face. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive back into that house, slam my fists on the table, and force them all to see what they had done. I wanted to make Laura regret every word, every laugh. But then I looked back at my daughter. Her head was bowed, her scalp still raw, her tiny shoulders trembling. She didn't need more fire. She needed shelter. That was the moment I chose dignity over destruction. A silent drive. The car roared to life, headlights cutting across the quiet street. I pulled out of the driveway, my chest still heaving with unspent anger. My daughter didn't speak. She just watched the houses blur past, her reflection small against the cold glass. "Mama," her voice finally broke the silence. "Yes, baby," I said, trying to steady my tone. "Are we in trouble?" My heart cracked. I slowed at a stop sign, blinking back tears. "No, sweetheart, we're not in trouble. We didn't do anything wrong." She hesitated before whispering, "Then why did Grandma look mad at me?" The words pierced deeper than anything Laura had said. I swallowed hard, because sometimes grown-ups don't know how to do the right thing. But you were brave. You told the truth, and that's never wrong. She nodded faintly, her chin resting on her knees. The rest of the drive was quiet, except for the occasional sniffle. I kept my focus on the road, every streetlight casting long shadows that stretched across the hood of the car. Inside, my thoughts spun in circles. I could lash out, call every relative, expose Laura, blast the truth across social media until no one could ignore it. That temptation burned hot, but what would that teach my daughter? That revenge was the answer? That destruction could heal? No. Tonight, I had to be her compass. The warmth of home. When we pulled into our driveway, the house looked darker than usual, almost like it knew we'd returned, with heavier hearts. I carried the grocery bags I'd brought for the party, untouched pies and casseroles that no one cared about anymore, into the kitchen. My daughter shuffled behind me, her slippers dragging against the floor. She stopped at the table and asked softly, "Can I sit here, Mama?" I nodded. She climbed into her chair, hugging the seat cushion as if it could keep her grounded. I moved around the kitchen slowly, pulling plates from the cabinet, warming food in the microwave. The normal motions helped calm me. The hiss of the microwave, the hum of the fridge, it was ordinary life stitching itself back together. When I set a slice of pie in front of her, her eyes lit up just a little. She took a small bite, then another, and soon she was eating with more appetite than she'd had all night. I sat across from her, my own plate untouched. I just watched her. The way she licked the fork, the crumbs sticking to her chin, the determined way she chewed, as if pie could fix everything. And for the first time since walking out of that house, I smiled. A flicker of temptation. Later, after tucking her into bed and smoothing my hand over her bare scalp, I sat alone in the living room, the quiet pressed heavy against my chest. My phone buzzed. A text from Laura. "Grow up, Mia. You're embarrassing yourself." The fury surged back instantly. I could reply with words that would cut her deeper than she'd ever cut me. I could forward her cruel confession to the whole family. I could ruin her reputation with a single post. My fingers hovered over the screen. But then I heard it, my daughter's soft breathing from down the hall. Steady, calm, safe. I put the phone down. Choosing dignity wasn't easy. It meant swallowing fire instead of spitting it. It meant resisting the sweet pull of revenge. It meant building instead of breaking. And tonight, it meant turning off my phone and letting Laura's message vanish into the void where it belonged. Building new rituals. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds. My daughter padded into the kitchen, wearing her favorite pajamas, the ones with little stars scattered across them. She rubbed her eyes and asked, "Do we still have to go to Christmas at Grandma's?" The question caught me off guard, but I answered honestly, "No, baby, we don't have to go anywhere that doesn't feel safe." Her shoulders relaxed. "Can we make our own Thanksgiving instead?" I blinked back tears and smiled. "Yes, we can make our own." So we did. We pulled out flour and sugar, mixed pancake batter in a bowl too big for her little hands, and laughed when she spilled half the milk on the counter. We set the table with mismatched plates, lit the cinnamon candle I kept for cozy days, and turned on Christmas music even though it wasn't December yet. We gave thanks in our own way, thanking each other, thanking the roof over our heads, thanking the quiet safety of our little home. It wasn't the Thanksgiving I had planned. It wasn't the one tradition promised, but it was ours. And in many ways, it was more whole than any family dinner had ever been. The quiet victory. That night, after dishes were washed and the music faded, I tucked her back into bed. She wrapped her arms around my neck and whispered, "Mama, today felt better." My throat tightened. I kissed her forehead. "That's because we chose love, baby. Love always makes it better." When I closed her bedroom door, I leaned against the frame and let the tears finally fall. Not tears of weakness, tears of release. Laura hadn't won. My silence wasn't surrender. It was strength. I hadn't let her drag me into the mud where she lived. I had chosen higher ground, and that, I realized, was the quietest, strongest form of victory. The silence in the room stretched, heavy but no longer suffocating. She rose slowly, her chair scraping against the wooden floor, and the sound echoed like a final note of closure. Her heart raced, but it wasn't with fear anymore. It was with a strange steadiness, as if every beat reminded her she was still here, still standing, still whole. For the first time, she wasn't waiting for someone else's reaction. She wasn't trying to soften the edges of her truth or cushion her words for comfort. She simply stood, holding her head high, letting the stillness affirm that she didn't owe anyone an apology for choosing peace over chaos. As she turned toward the door, she caught her reflection in the glass frame of a hanging picture. Her eyes looked different, clearer, almost luminous, as though they had shed years of heaviness in a single breath. She smiled faintly, not for anyone else but for herself, a private acknowledgement of the quiet courage she had carried all along. The doorknob felt cool under her palm. She pressed it down, listening to the soft click that signaled her departure. And then she stepped out, into a hallway that suddenly felt wider, brighter, filled with air that belonged entirely to her. Outside, the evening sky was brushed in shades of amber and violet. The world seemed unchanged, yet everything inside her had shifted. Her footsteps echoed against the pavement as she walked, but each one carried a rhythm of resolve, a beat of newfound freedom. A soft breeze stirred, lifting strands of her hair, whispering against her skin like a reminder that she was no longer bound to the weight she had once carried. She inhaled deeply, savoring the crispness of the air, tasting the promise of beginnings she hadn't yet imagined. At the corner of the street, she paused. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a name flashing on the screen. She stared at it for a moment, the familiar mix of dread and longing tugging at her chest. For years, she would have answered immediately, her voice eager to please, to explain, to fix. But now, her thumb hovered only for a second before she pressed decline. The silence that followed was louder than any conversation, yet it carried no sting, no regret, just clarity. She slipped the phone back into her pocket and kept walking. The small cafe across the street caught her eye. Warm light spilled from its windows, carrying the hum of laughter and clinking cups. She hesitated at the entrance, uncertain if she belonged anywhere outside the world she had just left behind. But a gentle push inside her insisted. This was the moment to claim space, to test her strength in ordinary ways. She entered quietly, the bell above the door chiming her arrival. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee wrapped around her, soothing and grounding. A barista greeted her with an easy smile. "First time here?" he asked, his tone light but kind. She nodded, returning a small smile of her own. "Yes, first time. What can I get you?" Her gaze wandered across the menu, but instead of overthinking, she simply chose. "A cappuccino, please." As he prepared her drink, she settled into a corner table by the window. The glass reflected her face faintly against the blur of traffic outside. She realized she was trembling, not with fear, but with the fragile intensity of stepping into life on her own terms. When the cup arrived, steam curling upward, she wrapped her hands around it. The warmth seeped into her skin, steadying her. She took a sip, the bitter sweetness lingering on her tongue, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like something was hers alone. A couple sat near her, laughing over shared stories. Their joy didn't sting the way it once might have. Instead, she found herself smiling, not because she envied them, but because she had rediscovered her own laughter waiting somewhere within her. Her thoughts drifted, not backward, not toward regrets, but forward. Where would she go tomorrow? What would she build? The questions were wide, unanchored, but instead of terrifying her, they thrilled her. The open-endedness of possibility was no longer an abyss. It was a horizon. She pulled a notebook from her bag, one she had bought months ago but never dared to use. Its pages were untouched, waiting. She clicked her pen and began to write not about pain, not about loss, but about the kind of future she wanted to claim. Each word flowed with surprising ease, as though her soul had been waiting for this space to speak. "I am not leaving empty-handed," she wrote. "I am leaving with strength." Hours slipped by unnoticed until the cafe began to quiet. She closed the notebook, her heart lighter, her shoulders no longer pulled down by invisible weight. As she stepped outside, night had spread fully across the sky, the stars faint but steady. On the walk back, she passed by a small park. Children's laughter still echoed faintly, though most families had gone home. She sat on a bench, listening to the rustle of leaves overhead. A stray cat padded near her feet, pausing to look up with curious eyes. She reached down, gently stroking its fur, and felt an unexpected kinship. Both of them were wanderers in the night, but neither was lost. The following morning, she woke to sunlight spilling through her curtains. For a moment, she stayed still, marveling at the absence of heaviness in her chest. It wasn't that all wounds had healed, but the air felt breathable again. She made herself breakfast, humming a tune she hadn't realized she remembered, and sat by the window to eat, savoring every bite. Later, she took a walk through the city streets. Shopkeepers lifted shutters, buses roared past, and schoolchildren hurried in clusters. It was ordinary, but it felt extraordinary to witness it without the fog of despair. Every detail was vivid: the crimson of a vendor's apples, the echo of a distant bell, the scent of fresh bread from a bakery. She entered the bakery on impulse. The woman behind the counter offered her a warm pastry with a cheerful "Good morning." She responded with genuine warmth, surprising even herself. As she left, pastry in hand, she realized strength wasn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was as simple as buying yourself something sweet and eating it without guilt. Later that week, she met with an old friend she hadn't seen in years. They sat in a quiet park, sharing updates, laughter, and the kind of silences that didn't demand explanations. Her friend listened intently, eyes shining with pride. "I can see it," her friend said softly. "You're lighter, stronger. It suits you." She didn't deflect the compliment this time. She let it sink in, let it settle inside her as truth. Because it was true. She was walking away, yes, but not as someone broken. She was walking away carrying strength, dignity, and the quiet power of survival turned into choice. She didn't need applause, nor validation, nor even promises of what tomorrow might hold. The act of walking away had already become her triumph, and every step forward was proof that her strength wasn't borrowed. It was hers, steady, unshakable, and enough to carry her into whatever waited beyond the horizon.